I've sat in on a webinar where the CMO, a highly technically proficient, building all kinds of things with Claude code for the marketing team and the company. Things that, in the past, we would go to our Salesforce engineer or administrator and say, build me this dashboard. And the guy giving the webinar just showed how he used Claude Code, just using prompts and building out these incredible apps that were able to, you know, show all kinds of sales data, lead gen data in real time. And, it was one of those things where everybody in this meeting were like, oh crap, I am really behind. I'm really behind. Most of us are way behind. Hello, and welcome to the Misadventures in Marketing podcast, presented by the American Marketing Association, San Francisco chapter. I'm Steve Haney, a fractional go-to-market executive in Silicon Valley.
And I'm Peter Farago, a high-tech marketing executive in the Bay Area. Each week, Steve and I come together to discuss all things in high-tech marketing.
We share our own experiences running marketing teams with a special focus on technology startups. We talk about our successes, our failures, what worked and what didn't. And periodically, we invite our CMO friends and other marketing colleagues onto the show. And hopefully we will impart some wisdom along the way. Peter, how have you been?
I've been well. More startup grind and that time of year to clean up the yard and such. How about you?
We're going to be getting into this, but I've just been doing a lot of research into this AI thing. Have you heard about it? It's, I hear it's pretty,
Yeah.
all the cool kids are doing it. Yeah. So, a lot of playing with the tools and researching that stuff and, digging into it more for my clients and whatnot. So it's become, all encompassing lately. Why don't we kick off with our tech news of the week? And the thing I would like to talk about are Apple's numbers, which were, I think, like all tech companies, pretty off the scale. But even off the scale for Apple, like they had their biggest quarter ever last quarter, which is kind of crazy. However, on the side, and it was kind of, it's more rumored now that in the next iOS update, which is a highly anticipated one, iOS 26.4, that they were going to be shipping a lot of the AI capabilities that they announced a year and a half ago and had to delay. And, the rumor is the 26.4 is not going to contain all of those, maybe a small subset. So despite these stellar crazy earnings where they sold more iPhones than ever, their stock dropped on concerns about this. Apple's whole special take on this is that they have access to all of your data and all of your apps, and developers expose different parts of their apps called application intents. That stuff, which everybody's been anticipating, kind of what we already experience now with Gemini and Claude and ChatGPT, is not going to be fully, at least in this next update. And Apple took a hit for it. So I just found that interesting.
My tech news update is about this commercial that ran. During the Super Bowl for Ring cameras. The feature's called Search Party. And, the use case was like, oh, no, your dog is missing. Well, today or yesterday, Ring, which is owned by Amazon, announced that they will no longer partner with a company named Flock Safety. Flock makes AI-powered surveillance cameras that share footage with law enforcement. So if you start noticing around your city around traffic lights and stuff, you'll see these flock cameras that are starting to track. So, in mobile, back in the mobile industry, because people carry phones around and phones have location data, there's a lot of talk about what's called the surveillance economy, and the sort of the dark side of tracking people's information. Well, because of consumer backlash, Ring is cut its conversations with Flock about, partnering on surveillance. So, it starts to, like I say, uh, bring into focus concerns about individual rights and privacy.
Yeah. Well, and again, when you've got this generative AI on top of all this data, the things people can deduce and understand about you get even scarier. There are a lot of implications, and it's very scary. So I can understand why people are pushing back on all this. I lately have been playing with Claude, as I mentioned before, and I've been trying to build apps with it. I've sat in on a webinar where the CMO, a highly technically proficient, building all kinds of things with Claude Code for the marketing team and the company. Things that, in the past, we would go to our Salesforce engineer or administrator and say, build me this dashboard. And the guy giving the webinar just showed how he used Claude Code, just using prompts and building out these incredible apps that were able to, you know, show all kinds of sales data, lead gen data in real time. And, it was one of those things where everybody in this meeting were like, oh crap, I am really behind. I'm really behind. Most of us are way behind. Most CMOs and VPs of marketing, not that we have to do like him and get our hands dirty as much, but we definitely need to have somebody on our teams who is who has the proficiency to build out these tools, all different kinds of aspects, like, where things were in the opportunity pipeline, where the stages of the lead funnel was. He built he was on a Mac, so he had built out a system tray app so that he could just click on it. And he said, before it would be weeks before we would have this data. Now everybody on my team and in the sales team has it in real time. And they just click on it and they can see where XYZ things in the pipeline are. It's pretty incredible what you can do with, a CLI and a few, well worded prompts to, solve these problems and just get things that before, it was just so painful to try to produce. And then, of course, once they produce your Salesforce engineer produced the dashboard for you, it wasn't particularly, you know, in great shape, right? I mean, things would need to be tweaked. It takes them forever to recode it. And, Claude can fix it in seconds for you to get it where it needs to be and how you like it. So that is how I am AIing right now, Peter. What about you?
The way I'm using AI, like to give a good tip, is I had kind of I had a trade off decision to make. We were actually, relatedly enough, looking at, do we need a go to market engineer, which is kind of a new, um, it's this new kind of operations type role that basically has a typically engineering background person that is just looking at like your revenue operations, your sales operations, your marketing operations. They're trying to automate a lot of stuff. We basically had defined a need internally of what we think we want to do. And then I used Claude, and it basically looked at 1,000 job descriptions for what is a go to market engineer, versus what I was saying. These are kind of the needs. We're shifting a person's role to do this, and it was able to kind of to kind of help me like frame that and give me sort of a lot of great, there's no way I would look at 1,000 job descriptions and, match that against what I'm trying to do. But it helped bring some real data and real research and analysis into kind of a trade-off decision we were making. If you hire this role, then it becomes, you gotta, they require having a lot of system and volume in place already so they can go and do a bunch of optimization on top of that. We weren't really ready for that. That was one of the concerns we had, so it was like, what do they really do? So that's how I used it. And it was kind of a combination of research, a kind of combination of analysis, kind of a combination of, decision trade-off framework. And I thought that was very cool.
This episode of Misadventures in Marketing is brought to you by the American Marketing Association, San Francisco. AMASF is a member-run organization that has been serving the Bay Area marketing community for over 80 years. Through programs, events, workshops, and discussions that introduce the latest trends and developments in the industry, to networking events that bring together the best marketing minds in the region, AMASF diligently works to foster professional learning and career advancement opportunities for all of its members. Joining is easy. To become a member of AMASF, go to amasf.org. That's amasf.org and click on Get Involved on the top menu, then become a member. For just $199 a year, you get access to events, resources, credentialed learning opportunities, and a community of fellow marketers who will help you expand your network and advance your career. The AMASF membership, the investment you make for the career you love. Diving into today's topic, the new customer journey. The journey is very loopy and it bounces in and out and it stops. It's definitely not a straight line over a set period of time. It's kind of like spaghetti. It goes everywhere back and forth. And of course, with all these AI tools that prospects/buyers are using, by the time they do get to you or come to your website, they are way better armed. Their brains are just much more supercharged going into the conversation. So by the time that they do sit down with a BDR or an LDR, and they're reaching out, they're just much better prepared to have a good conversation and tough questions for you as a vendor. They're not just going to come with data, right? Because they're going to be asking whatever chatbot they're using deeply about, they're going to feed data into it. Here, here's my particular issue. Here's my particular metrics. Here's, my problems. Here's what I'm trying to solve over the long term. And they're going to have broader context than, I've been thinking about this and I have my approach and, maybe somebody else in the department who's one of the decision makers has their thought and their approach. You're going to have a comprehensive view from the AI. Now, whether that's good or not, or whether it's right or not, is a completely different question. But it will give you as a buyer a much more powerful view into how you're going to make your decision. And BDRs are just have to be way better prepared. And so that just seems to me to be the most important part of the new customer journey is, yes, prospects always did research, but it's just that now it's going to be much more formidable.
Because buyers are potential buyers are going to do a lot of research on LLMs that they're gonna require BDRs to be better equipped for that initial discovery call. Is that kind of what you're saying?
Yeah, but, I think also they're just gonna have to come off as more capable and understanding, right? And earn the trust of that prospect that these guys know what they're talking about and they know what they're doing. I think, there's gonna be a lot of pressure on BDRs because they have to respond much more quickly to get that buyer to trust them and to understand them and to know that they're in good that buyer, they need to, communicate to them that they're in good hands and that they can help them solve their problem. Maybe it means even um, a more human level will be required, ironically, where you're going to have to, not just provide data, not just provide information, not just do, you know, assuming you get down the road, a proof of concept, etc., and provide all those tools, but just you know, trust us, you're in good hands, and let's, proceed down the opportunity pipeline together, so to speak. And that's just at the end of the day a human quality.
So what do you think about like the overall B2B journey then? Like how is it going to change? Is it just that folks are going to have AI as a resource or is there more happening?
It's going to be in a way, product marketing comes way more into focus because I think all the content you produce, the tools you produce, they're going to have to be out there and they're going to have to be everywhere to inform the AI bots. I mean, I could create an app that would, help me assess, um, which one of these vendors I should work with and, give me scenarios, information I need. And, I could have this running constantly 24/7, bringing in new data, looking at new scenarios, and really just, constantly be assessing all of the vendors in real time to understand which ones are going to be better. So that means, I think, for marketers, that we need to ensure that all the content has to be available there for the chat bot to take advantage of when it builds that app. And, you're constantly influencing the concept, the dialogue, the framing of the problem with all the information you're putting out on the web, so that the chat bots feed the prospects what you want them to see.
I would imagine it's pretty straightforward to handle it by creating a knowledge base, a folder, say in Claude or ChatGPT that has all the company's FAQs and product spec sheets, and maybe there's some objection handling, maybe there's some product descriptions, some value prop stuff, maybe there's messaging guidelines or whatever, like a messaging house or a messaging spine if you're doing a lighter. So my point is, you can create your own knowledge base that a rep could be like using to ask questions, right? There are AI apps that will prompt you in real time in a call. Like I think Fathom might even have this. Maybe Zoom has it, but it will during the conversation in real time. It can give you cues like a coach and say, "Hey," so it's listening to the conversation, and it can say, "Hey, I don't know, the buyer seems to be concerned about the following. You might want to point out XYZ," right? So like my point is you can have real time interaction, real time coaching. You can have your own agent. You don't even have to have an agent. You just use one of the foundation models, ChatGPT or Claude or whatever, with your documents loaded in there for the company.
But the thing is, you know, all those machines on either side of the discussion need a lot of content and a lot of data, a
And
lot of
proper
information
context. Yep.
together. And
Yep.
and there you go again, proper context, and you wanna shape the framework, you wanna shape the discussion, you don't want your competitors shaping the discussion for you. And, these LLMs, another thing I worry about, and I know I've gone on about this before, if you cut an AI, does it bleed? I just don't, I'm not sure I yet trust the subtlety of these LLMs to assess context, to understand the different aspects of what could be driving a decision and be able to make. It seems like there's and I could be wrong about this, but there's a dependence upon logic and reason,
Of
right?
course.
And what humans do is they don't live in logic and reason, they live in a narrative. Just one quick example about this. And then, what an LLM going out trying to help you make a buying decision, understand a narrative versus, no, I'm just bringing you back the data. And of course, you will be a rational human and will act on the data and reason. And that's just not the way the human brain works. One quick example. I was head of marketing at, mid-size software company, a few hundred employees, global, yada, 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 a few hundred million in revenues. And the CEO hated a certain software vendor. And it's a big one. You know who it is. We've all heard of this guy, big, gigantic, multi-billion-dollar corporation. And he just didn't like him because he didn't like the CEO. He thought he was a jerk. And we were fully embedded in this system throughout sales and marketing. But he really wanted a reason to get rid of it because he didn't want to give any more money to this company. Makes absolutely no sense on a reason scale, right? It's like, well, this thing is working, it's fully embedded, it's competitive, the switching costs would be huge, but it didn't matter. Now, we ended up staying with that solution that we were with, um, after we went through an assessment of the competitors. And that's kind of an extreme example of the point I'm trying to make is, shaping the narrative out there on the web, shaping the context such that are the LLMs going to be influenced by narratives the way humans are, where they're not rational and they don't make sense, but they follow a certain logic within the brain of the buyer? Um, or is it going to be like, 2 plus 2 equals 5 and you guys need 5? And so there should be no argument. You should go with the solution. And just looking at that as an overall concept around the customer journey.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, we're selling to people, and people are emotional and not rational. And this is the problem with economics, right? Like, there's always the assumption that all players in the market are rational. It's like the foundation of every uh, economics discussion you have, and it's like, well, yeah, but all buyers are not rational, so this may not hold up, and this is the case, right? So, um, you know, you s- there's not going to be a substitute for human interaction and what we care about.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And, there's not to get too off topic here, but there's always infinite demand. Right, meaning new jobs created. Another example people go back to is when the ATM came into being, I guess, was it the 1970s? And it's like, oh, well, all tellers are going to be out of jobs. You're not going to need bank tellers anymore. But the reality is, over the next couple of decades, the number of bank tellers exploded because they could do higher level stuff like, sure, you could go in and say, I need a money order, or could you give me, $2,000 in cash or whatever. But then they became salespeople and they started upselling people on new services, new offerings, and, could just take on a higher level role. So the ATM took away the grunt work, just like these LLMs are taking away grunt work for coders or copywriters or, whatever the case may be. Um, but then that gives people, just as you've eloquently put it, the ability to go up a level and focus on, new kinds of tasks that we always wanted to be done, but could never happen properly because we didn't have the bandwidth to do it. This episode of Misadventures in Marketing is brought to you by Peakbound Studio, the Bay Area video production house for high-impact marketing videos. Online video is quickly becoming the universal language of business and the primary medium through which marketers speak to their prospects. According to Forbes and market research firm Statista, 90% of all businesses are currently using online video in their marketing. And in 2025, 85% of those businesses will increase their spending in online video over last year. Enter Peakbound Studio. Peakbound Studio is not just another video production team. They are storytellers, visual artists, and high-tech experts rolled into one. They manage everything from the initial concept to the final edit. Your online video presence has to be responsive, vibrant, and constant to get the attention of prospects and spread your message into every corner of the marketplace. Peakbound makes sure your messages are unique, compelling, and pop in today's attention-scarce world. So whether you need brand storytelling, customer testimonials, corporate videos, or short-form social media content, Peakbound delivers videos that don't just look good, they work. Learn more at www.peakbound.studio. That's www.peakbound.studio. Peakbound Studio, the video production house that puts your online video to work. So, Peter, what do you think marketers can do? I think just like the, if you look at it as this AI as a team member and they're armed with it, the prospects are armed with an AI, you're armed with an AI, and, you're trying to get them down the funnel, get them into the opportunity pipeline. I think just looking at them as another player is the healthiest way to understand how the customer journey is going to be changed, right? Again, if this webinar was any indication of what marketers are going to be doing in the future, just building these apps to help you make decisions or present data or give insight. I think as a vendor, you're going to have a lot of, not just information, but a lot of data and tools. I don't know what they are, assets out on the web, so that when I go to build my decision-making app on which data enrichment tool I'm going to buy next, that chatbot that's building that decision-making app has everything it needs from you and more, so that when it's thinking and making a decision, it bends towards your solution.
The marketer needs to think about the buyer using AI at various stages of their search and evaluation and decision making, and that you can also use it, and that you just have to consider that's now part of the toolkit of every buyer. And that there's some stuff that just, you got to keep thinking AI is not a be all end all or a panacea. There are roles for the person and there are roles for the machine, and that, that division of labor, that handoff's really important, right? And at the end of the day, there are people buying things from other people, and that's something to keep in mind, right? So it's not a full 180-degree change in direction. It's a little more subtle than that, and nuanced, and I think interrelated. It's gonna be an interesting story. Yeah. How it
No, you're
evolves.
bringing out a great point, right? Just we tend to get in our, especially here in tech, we tend to get in the silos of our screens and our tools and our toys, not understanding that, taking that prospect out to a nice dinner and, drinking with them is going to have a huge effect as well. And, because we're humans and we live in the real world and we still like to go out and enjoy, real life. And those things are, probably a way bigger, influence than would like to admit. All right, Peter, would you like to read us out?
We want to thank you, our audience, for listening. If you like the show, a 5-star review would go a long way. It helps us get the word out to more people. We want to certainly thank our editors, Lorenzo Fernandez Kopak at Peakbound Studios, Brian Douglas at Creative Commons. They help make us sound and look great. We want to thank our marketing support person, Ian Robinson Lambert, who helps get the word out, Julian Barnalis for being our consulting producer, and Renita Dutta for driving the marketing research and the content calendar. We want to thank Thomas Moyer, president of the AMA San Francisco, for presenting this podcast. And we'd like to thank, finally, our sponsor for this podcast, Workbox, for their support of Misadventures in Marketing.